don't think so. I've mentioned, I've covered most of what I've written about, sort of thing. And obviously, if people want to go and have another look back at some of the things I wrote, during the COVID period as well, or have a look at my Substack page if they're interested in finding out more. And if they're thinking of voting for Plaid Cymru, if they think that is going to bring about change, I wrote a 4-part series about, I think it was called From the Welsh Labour Frying Pan into the Plaid Cymru Fire. It's just to show what was in the manifesto, to try and condense it a little bit. But, I don't know what the answer is. I feel like I don't want to vote anymore for any of them. I think if I do vote, it may have to be a tactical vote. But then if we're not getting people voting anyway, if people are too apathetic, you wonder whether a tactical vote is going to work anyway, Because, for example, in my constituency where I live, when we had the election last year, we got, Stephen Crabb was our MP, and he got ousted by the candidate who was parachuted in for Labour. And when I analysed the votes in the Pembrokeshire, because I live in Pembrokeshire, when I analysed the votes in the Pembrokeshire area, only 20% of Pembrokeshire residents had actively voted for Henry Tufnell, the Labour candidate who got in, So you think 80% of people either didn't vote or voted a different way, and that's not democracy.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and you mentioned apathy. I think that's a massive point at the moment. That people are just, you try and talk to people about these things. It's a great point to bring up. I'm glad you brought it up. You try and talk to people about these things, and it's either they just actively say they don't want to know, which doesn't help. It's actively like, oh, I know I'm digging my head in the sand. I'm just going to keep doing it anyway, despite the fact that it's not just my privileges that are on the line. It's yours as well, because politics affects everybody. So if you're going to have this is one of the things that was only really, become apparent to me, and I started to take it seriously as I come into my, early 20s. So if you're going to have the right to vote, you should at least take it seriously, and you should at least do your due diligence with looking at manifestos and stuff like that, and holding your politicians to account, and doing exactly what you done, which is scrutinizing the vote, for example, which, as we saw at the general election level, the Labour government got in with about 20% of the total votes that they could have gotten, the total voter base. So 80% of the country either didn't vote for them or voted against them. Yet 100% of people now are subject to whatever they want to do. So again, that's why if you're going to have the right to vote, you should at least take it very, very seriously. And it's something that I'm happy to see with a lot of the people I talk to in the younger generation at the moment, the people just under my age bracket. They, as you said, young people being switched on, they seem to be quite switched on, and they seem to be taking this seriously, which is really, really good to see. And gives me that little glimmer of hope. It's hard to retain little glimmers of hope in the world we live in sometimes, but again, it gives me that little glimmer of hope that the initiatives that are being pushed through in many ways are not having the effect that they want, and there are people coming through that are willing to stand up and say either no, this is wrong, or no, I'm not going along with this, whatever it is. And it's going to take that. It's going to take that. The classic saying of weak men create hard times. Where it seems that we're certainly going through that phase at the moment, the hard times phase, certainly. And it's going to be incumbent on, I think, people in my age bracket and also the younger generation coming up that are going to, really have to be that driving force for change. And makes you wonder why then Labour are trying to bring the vote down to like 16 when they've indoctrinated these young people into this way of thinking and stuff like that. I do think if we aren't careful, we will end up with a permanent one-party system, which, if you think about it, for the last 30 years with Conservatives and Labour not being really different, it is really what we've gotten anyway. But we have perilous little time to change it now, from what I've seen.
Well, it's lovely to hear you speak, honestly, because, a lot of the people that I've got to got friendly with during the last 5 years because we've been questioning the government policies. You know, we're all sort of late 40s upwards, and you know, not many. We don't get. There's not a lot of youngsters that join us. So it's lovely to hear you speaking like this, and it's really heartening to hear that you know, you're aware of a lot of people your age who are awake then to the propaganda.
Yeah, that's, I think, sharing the work that people like yourself have done as well, because one of the key things that people like myself and obviously the younger generation coming through have is obviously learning from people that came before them, and not in ways now just taking everything the school system says, for example, as gospel. So obviously that's what in many instances, as far as I've seen it, have gotten us into this mess, whether we've realized it or not, is the censorship of those other voices on the other side that have good points to raise. And I just wonder if people actually, you know, listen to people and have positive discourse with people, you know, that everybody benefits, which is always what I try to foster and share anyway. Oh, go on. Was you gonna?
No, exactly, and not shut people down, you know, because too many people these days, they just, if you say something that they don't agree with, they just want to shut you down. They don't have an argument. They want to call you a name or shut you down. I had on my bio, it might still be there on X, you know, former teacher, and I've had people saying, "Oh, thank God you're not a teacher anymore."
Mm-hmm.
You know, oh, it's just because
Meanwhile,
they don't come back with a valid counter argument.
mm-hmm, only labels and name calling, as you said, ad hominems, etc. And makes you wonder, those people will say that, they'll be super prideful and arrogant, and they'll say that. Meanwhile, schools are falling apart, kids are not listening, the outcomes are all down. So really, it does make you think, you know, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, right? And yeah, there was one thing I brought it back around to the teaching thing, is that I don't want to make you think that I'm putting you on the spot with this next question or anything like that. But when we were going back to talking about parents being scared about, you know, either disciplining children or taking the action they need and feeling like they're constantly walking on eggshells, especially with the school system, how it is at the moment with... I don't want to say predatory, but again, it does seem that it wants any excuse to further divide a child from their family. I don't want to say almost in a way that a groomer would. But do you have any advice for parents that might have listened to some of the things you said about the school system, the government, all things like this, and are just concerned about, you know, what their children are being taught and how they can help steer the ship, so to speak, as best they can? Again, I don't want you to think as though again you have to have all the answers to this question or anything like that. Do you just have any either from personal experience, the things that you've read, the things that you saw inside the system, all of these things? Do you have any advice for parents that might have just heard all of this stuff now and are just like, oh my God, what the hell do I do?
Well, that's a big question. I mean, there are sadly parents out there who don't really take a lot of interest in what their child does at school, simply because, you know, they're so busy working and trying to make a living and pay the bills and provide. But, you know, if you can, just take an interest in what's going on in school. I know that more and more people are opting to home educate, and if my granddaughter was living closer to me, I've offered I would have home educated her, to be honest. But take an interest in what's going on in your school. Read the letters that are coming home, because, you know, we've seen letters going home telling parents that the children are they're celebrating, what is it, Refugee Week and things like this. You know, there's all sorts of things that, you know, and ask questions. I would say, if you're concerned that your children are not learning life skills and that you know, they're being indoctrinated by some of these woke philosophies, you know, challenge the school. Go and see the head teacher, write to the Board of Governors, you know, write to the Director of Education even. But the more parents and grandparents, you know, can do this, then the better. But And as for boundaries, as for discipline, then you've got to have boundaries. There is help out there. There are websites. There are sources of advice that you can access if you're having issues with your child, and look at their diet. I would say as well, if you are having, if your child is displaying behavioural issues, look at their diet and look at limiting the amount of screen time that they are getting, because there is evidence out there. There's a really good book, even before, all the iPads and the iPhones and what have you and computers came out. There was a book written, I think it was back in the 1970s, and it's 4 arguments for the elimination of television. And even in that book, the author was talking about how even television was affecting children's behaviour, or had the potential to affect children's behaviour. So, it's not just limiting iPads and what have you. It's maybe limit television and get your kids out and into the fresh air and get them exercising and things.
Absolutely. I think it's almost a lot of things that you've obviously listed there, and I appreciate it's obviously a very loaded question and a very difficult question to answer, especially if you're trying to speak definitively and stuff like that, which is why I appreciate even just the little things added there that, as you said, when people are working, especially now when it's not uncommon, in fact, it's the vast majority of instances where both parents have to work. It's not a case of, for example, where you have one person who's bringing in the main source of income and then the other person's mainly working if they want to, and if they've got that time on the side too, in order to just add to the family pot, so to speak. When you've got both parents that have to, by virtue of just having to survive in many instances, have to work, obviously the child then is left without either of them in many instances, and then they're left with the school system and the people within the school system, the teachers, as their models on how to act. And then if the parents are negligent outside of that, then if the school is not doing what they're supposed to and being good role models, they're being, in a hypothetical, let's say they're being really bad role models. If they haven't got the parents to be the good role models, well, the child has no counterbalance. And obviously it's going to swing more and more towards the one side. So exactly what you were mentioning there is trying to be as present as possible in children's lives.
Yes.
Simply because they need you.
Yeah. One thing which I'd like to mention, which is important as well, and it came to my attention when I was writing about the smacking ban, was there was a survey undertaken in 2019 called Beth Nawr in Wales by the Children's Commissioner then, and it was obviously they asked school children their views on certain things, and the amount of, well, there was one quote by a child, and this is quite across the board. But this child had said what a lot of children probably feel: I wish my parents would sort of speak to me more. That they're always on their screens, they're always on their phones. So that's something that as well. With parents, we all do it. We're all getting a little bit addicted to phones, but yeah, just bear that in mind and put your phones down and engage with your children and listen to them.
And goes back to what you're saying as well about having boundaries as well, and making sure the children have those boundaries set and they're actually adhered to. So you see no end of parents nowadays that seem to want to pawn off their kids to the iPad or pawn off their kids to the phone. And again, what they're spending most of their time with in many ways is what they're going to be raised by. Oh. So you have to, again, it's too much of a good thing, isn't it? Or again, if you could sometimes call it a good thing. Obviously, again, people make arguments whether a mobile phone is a good thing or not, especially when you're in the context of a child. But again, the dose makes the poison, as they say. You can have too much of a good thing as you can with anything. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things that will get people to be more conscious and bear in mind there. And again, just speaks to apathy in all areas of life. It seems just we're apathetic about everything, and maybe we're now seeing the fruits of that, and maybe we shouldn't be so apathetic, not just politically, but in just the smallest things day to day as well. But yeah, thank you very much